Thanks, Andy. This is a twin hatter with my colleague, Andy. We're not related. Well, I just worked out this morning I've known him for half of my life, and more than half of my life. So what we were looking to do is this. Now, that's a Maori proverb, and it essentially translates as I walk backwards into the future with my eyes fixed on the path. And that's kind of the theme of what we're going to talk to. I'm not going to pronounce it because the W-H-A-K sound is not particularly polite in this society. But we're going to try and walk backwards. Why a Maori proverb? Because for 2 years, parallel to PAS 2161 development, we were working in New Zealand with a new consistent condition data collection standard. And it was all about local roads, collecting data, and their objective was consistency and repeatable data. And there's very strong parallels in the timeline with the PAS 2161 development. So I'm walking backwards, and it's going to look to the future. So those of you who've been around for 30 plus years may remember the deflectograph. In the 90s, it was the only method of reporting highway condition. Principal roads only, 20% coverage per year. So structural survey, and the reporting was the length with less than 0 years residual life. It's very reliant on inputs, commercial traffic and construction. Now, transport policy and programs, which was the 1990s standard, capital funding was only allocated to principal road maintenance. And the amount you got was linked to road network length and condition. But there was also a secondary element where if you compiled a scheme bid over a certain value with a residual life profile of more than half of it with 0 residual life, you could get that directly funded. So there was an element of using the data to try and support bids. And the drawback to the deflectograph is it's slow, but reflecting on the alarm survey, it says 53%, more than 107,000 miles of road have less than 15 years structural life remaining. My view is that's quite an empirical assessment. It's not based on a measurement. It's not based on scanner surveys. It's not based on other road condition data. It's taking defects and trying to equate that to structural life. So if you really want to know residual life, the deflectograph still does that. The limitations, largely speaking, it's very slow. It walks at, I used to call it the pace that my grandmother walks. So 2.4 kilometers per hour. So you need traffic management. The data quality or the data output is very reliant on inputs. So change your construction, you change the output. Change your traffic, you change the outputs. So you can target processing to tell the story that you want to tell. Interestingly, it's still used very extensively by national highways on their DBFO contracts as a measure of performance. Around the 2000s, the capital funding expanded to include other roads, and you then got into a different performance standard. So BV 96, BV 97, which were visual surveys. We all know what visual surveys are, and most of you will have a picture of your politicians looking at a hole. That's a form of visual survey, but the standard was written about coarse visual inspections, and that was an accepted alternative for the A roads. The defects are well defined. You've got a whole list of defects that are identified in the UK PMS manuals. You've got inspector accreditation, and there was a period when a rut bar was also used on the A roads to try and get that deformation measurement. And it's processed, and you've got a structural, a wearing, and an edge condition indicator. And the reporting was lengths over the thresholds. It's a more rapid survey. It's done from a moving vehicle, and so it wasn't causing disruption. However, it's very objective. You get consistency between inspectors. You get consistency of the same inspector over a period of time. The weather and the lighting would be an influence, but you could develop work programs from the output, and you had your best value performance indicator. We then moved to the scanner, and scanner developed from tracks. And the scanner is a specification for the collection and processing of the data. It's not about the survey vehicle. The survey vehicle is the platform by which you deliver the scanner data. The original specification was 2005, and there's been minor updates since that time. And the road condition indicator that we are used to for the red, amber, green is the processing output of 5 of over 40 defects. So the scanner is collecting a lot of defects that are not used in anger in terms of road condition reporting. And it uses thresholds for each of the defects and weightings to try and derive the condition score for each 10-metre section of road, which you're all familiar with. The RCI ranges from 0 to 315, but for reporting purposes, it was the red, amber, green, just in 3 bands. The original weightings and thresholds were derived from sample surveys in 2 or 3 councils. So it's a very small subset of data was used to derive national reporting. That may be one of the weaknesses. And that morphed into NI 168 and 169. They removed some double counting. So in the first generation of scanner specification, you had taken 2 measures of profile, multiple measures of cracking. So back in my local authority engineers, our roads improved by 3% on reporting 1 year because the specification changed. And you get always into that complex dialogue with your elected member saying, why have your roads improved? What have you done? And it's just the algorithm changes. 2011, that became the single data list, which we're still using, 130.01, 130.02. No change to the algorithm, no change to the specification. The scanner specification went through a minor update. What scanner does have is a rigorous accreditation process and has ongoing QA, and there's audit process for all the data that's delivered to the authorities. And there are numerous other weighting sets of outputs so you can measure and quantify edge condition. CCI, carriageway condition index, which was used for financial reporting. Complementary weighting sets, which were used to define schemes that will be receptive to surface treatment, resurfacing, etc. So there's an awful lot more to scanner than just the red, amber, green. Scanner research did continue, and there was some work published in 2017, which looked at consistency, parameters, picking up potholes, using high-resolution rut data, changes and improvements to the RCI calculation. None of them were implemented. Probably it's a function of where the highway industry was in terms of leadership. It was at the end of the HMEP program, so there was no one taking the work and saying, we think this should be implemented. So, to the future.
So some of you will recognize what Mark has just been talking about in terms of the history of road condition monitoring. Those of you who have been around for a while will know that also scanner was considered only by the RCI. And as Mark has just said, scanner is way more than a red, amber, green. But that was never really developed or moved on. So over the last few years, the industry's been working on the new standard, which is now implemented, but we are waiting the outcome of the calibration data sets that have been submitted to TRL and the DFT, and we'll hear more about that from Laura at the end of this session. It's here, isn't it? Yeah, it's here. So if you want to hear about what the DFT think about AS 2161 and how it's going to implement or affect the industry, come back here and listen to Laura at 4 o'clock. So AS 2161, that stands for Publicly Available Specifications, and obviously it's the 2161st iteration of a publicly available specification. The scope is quite wide-ranging, but it is written just for the purposes of condition data monitoring for the DFT. Okay, so what does that really mean, and why have I subtitled this section of the talk as the future referenced by the past? We'll explain that in a minute. So I hope you can read that easier than I can, because it doesn't look very good from where I'm standing looking on that screen. There are a number of different technologies that can apply to get accreditation from PAS. It is opening the market up. Scanner was quite restrictive in the sense that if you wanted to be in the market and play that game, you had to spend a lot of money to buy some very technically advanced electronics, and that effectively acted as a barrier. PAS 2161 opens the gate effectively. If you can demonstrate that you can meet the requirements of PAS, then you can offer condition surveys. So those of you who are from local authorities could potentially have 20 or so people knocking on your door in 6 months' time saying, I can deliver PAS surveys. Is that a good thing? I'll let you decide that. So what we've got here, effectively on the left-hand side, is the type of technology that can offer, that people can develop a solution to offer data through. So it goes from mobile application technologies, put your smartphone in the dash of a vehicle, record the data, send it off, get it looked at, and comes back with a whole load of IA-based defects. You can have an engineer's inspection, which is anybody who's technically competent can drive down the road and do pretty much what Mark talked about earlier with CDI. Mobile technologies. Other technologies, well, that probably covers just about everything, or dedicated collection vehicles like Scanner. And then there is also vehicle telematics. So that's data that comes off your car and off the engine management units and so on and so forth. 5 categories in PAS. 1, no deterioration. 2, minor or aesthetic deterioration. 3, moderate deterioration. 4, moderate to severe deterioration, and 5 is severe deterioration. How do we decide whether it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? The guidance is a little light. It's judgment on behalf of the technology and the engineer. So how's the process gone through? There were a set of accreditation routes that were published earlier this year. There was a time window when anybody who wanted to offer a PAS survey in the future was asked to go and survey 3 networks. Those 3 networks were about 100 kilometers worth of data in Cumberland, similar amount in Liverpool, and another similar amount in Essex. Anybody who wanted to offer a survey was to survey those 100 kilometers through, and in some cases do repeat surveys to allow for reproducibility and repeatability calculations. It was reported as a combined carriageway. Those of you who are familiar with scanners, it's usually lane-based. This is full carriageway width-based. So TRL, this is taken from documentation put out by the DFT. There were 27 different technology companies that went to the briefing session. Out of that, 18 companies chose to participate. And out of those 18 companies, there were 25 different technologies. So some companies put in more than one technology type. Those companies submitted their data sets after they were given some calibration data. So they were given roughly 10% of each of the networks data from the benchmarking surveys. So this is one of our data sets for Essex. There's 3 sets of data on that chart, one of which is our scanner machine-based survey, one is a visual-based survey, and the bits in the middle where you can see 3 lines of data is the calibration data set that was sent to us. Just in the interests of fairness, I'm going to show some data from Cumberland and from Liverpool. Same process in both of those as there was in Essex. So PAS 2161, it's setting out the requirements for open condition monitoring for the DFT. Then this is very important. This is for the DFT. You, as a local authority, might conclude that you don't want to use PAS for your own work. That's outside of the scope of the PAS. But this is quite important. The benchmark data was drawn from a study of 24 highway engineers, 8 of whom carried out a survey of one of the networks. So if you do the maths, that means that no one engineer surveyed more than one network. So you've got 3 networks with data that's being used to harmonize together a calibration data set, but the repeatability and reproducibility of that calibration data, I'll let you draw your own conclusions, in that you've got no cross-fertilization between networks. So 25 different technologies have participated in the demonstration, and there will be different levels of granularity. You can see that on that map, because some of our RAV data is very granular, some of the visual data is less so. That's equally applicable. So some things to consider. And I think these are questions that everybody who works in a local authority, as I did for 30 years, should ask themselves. When I get this data, or when I'm investigating what data I want to use, how does that relate to what I need and want? Will the new data streams give me the depth of information that I need to manage my network? Because one of the criticisms of scanner, the scanner specification, is you've got red, amber, and green. But there could be a whole load of defects that would affect whether a score of amber was given from the survey, or indeed red. You could quite easily get amber on profile alone on scanner. Does that give you what you need? Going forward, there will be a published set of approved surveys. They will all be different technologies. They will all give you a PAS output. Question I think that needs to be borne in mind is, does this particular data help me manage my network? Does it help discern the things that I'm interested in? Does it help me in whole life costing? Does it help me on early intervention? Does it help me drive my maintenance programs? So I'll leave it there. Thank you.